All right. Hi, am I audible? Okay, great. Okay, good day, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. And then I hope everyone is okay, especially right now. It's winter. I don't know about your country, but me in here right now, it's winter and it's even though the sun is here, it's quite chilly actually outside. So hopefully everyone stay warm and then drink anything that is hot or warm to warm up yourself so don't get sick. Anyway, oh, before we started, I also wanted to say Happy New Year for everyone. Let's start at this new beginning to be more, what is it? Happy, cherish, to be more full of love. And by the way, also welcome for today's event. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for today. And if you guys haven't known me, my name is Dea, and I am part of Students for Liberty. And on behalf of Students for Liberty, I'm very delighted to welcome you to today's event, which is part of our Speak Your Mind Impact project. And at Students for Liberty itself, we work with young people to encourage the critical thinking, open dialogue, and also freedom to express themselves, express your ideas responsibly, especially in this era where everything is very open, where the conversation, disagreements, and also debates often increasingly happen, especially online. And today's event, the dialogue itself is also designed to be a space for you guys to explore the complexities and sometimes the uncomfortable topics that you guys went through, or maybe you guys have experienced through the respectful discussions and also curiosity as well as mutual understanding. So today we'll be also focusing on free speech and online expression and what they mean for young people today. I really hope that you guys really taking advantage of today's event because it might gonna help you to encounter these things or addresses this experience that you found, especially us as a young people currently studying in a university, which we often tend to see a lot of clashes happens between one and another. So hopefully it will be interactive, reflective, and also thought provoking to you guys. And before we begin, as usual, we're going to introduce you to our partner and also our speaker for today. So today, everyone, we're not alone. Students for Liberty held this event not by our own, but also we're very happy and honored to be joined by the Free Speech Union, or FSU, which is a nonpartisan mass membership organization based in the UK and works to defend and promote freedom of speech. The FSU itself supports individuals that facing challenges related to freedom of expressions and also campaigns for broader cultural and policy change to protect open debate. And today's session, I'm not going to be alone. Your guys is not going to be alone because we will be led by Mr. Vinay Kapoor here, which is the Education and Engagement Officer at the Free Speech Union. Mr. Vinay itself lets FSU's work with young people, and also he administers the Ian MacTaggart program, which is a grant giving initiative that supports students' academics and young people in fostering open debate and freedom of expression across the UK. And he is also a recent first class politics graduate from the University of Warwick, and where he served as the president of Warwick Speak Easy from 2023 to 2025, a free speech society dedicated to encouraging open discussion and the exchange of ideas. Now, I bet you guys felt kind of okay, too much talking now. Getting to it. Okay, now, without any further ado, we're gonna get into it, and we're very pleased also to have Mr. Phoenix here. But before that, we will do a little bit of warm up, pre-quiz, and introduction to free speech. Oh, basically, guys, today's the pre-quiz is just basically going to, we just wanted to know what are you guys think or what are your thoughts about free speech itself? Like, what is in your mind when you hear the ideas of free speech? Like, what are you thinking about it? So in here, in the slides, there are a QR code or the what is it? The code or the link that you can just type it on and then look it up. And then I think it's just only like three questions. So it will be very quick, like quick. We mean quick. So just answer as honestly as possible and just based on whatever you have on your mind. No need to Google it, no need to GPT it or something. Just basically your honest answer for that because we want to get to know you and your baseline knowledge about what do you think about free speech itself. And after that, we're going to unpack this further and we're going to dive into it with the materials that will be led by Mr. Fee. But before that, if you guys have the reaction buttons, do you guys mind give me a thumbs up if you're done with the quiz? So I'll know everyone is ready and buckle up to dive into the session. Okay. Or let me know in the comment if you guys don't mind. Or thumbs up if you have the reaction button. Okay, Pahara is done. I'm curious though. I haven't opened the question. Is it a hard question? Hmm. Okay. Okay, while waiting for the participant to finish this, Mr. Vinay, how are you, by the way?
Good. It's very cold here. So I know you talked
Yeah.
about weather, but in the UK it's actually snowing, which is
Oh, it is
yeah,
currently like right now.
it's snowing,
Oh,
which is actually
awesome.
quite has doesn't happen that much anymore. So post Christmas snow, which means no one really wants to go outside. So I'm kind of incentivized to stay here the whole day. Um, but yeah, no, other than that, I'm good. But it is very cold. But that is the UK, but it's cold.
Yeah. In here in Turkey, I'm in Turkey, by the way. In here, it's
Yeah,
chilly, not really that cold, but for the snow itself, it only happened for a day, like a couple days
yeah,
ago, on the
yeah.
1st of January, and after that, it's done.
Mm,
But probably there will be more in February. But the
mm,
windy, it's quite crazy here.
yeah.
But yeah, it is cold. After something, I'm gonna go get a hot chocolate or like hot coffee for this. This is from the tropical girl countries like me cannot handle really well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was on holiday in Thailand last week and it was so
Oh,
nice. And then coming back here,
yeah,
it's just so, it's just so much worse.
indeed,
The contrast is
indeed,
noticeable. Yeah.
indeed. Okay, great. I see that everyone is done. Now, without any further ado, I will give the floor to you, Mr. Kapoor,
Cool.
and then
Well,
you
th
may start to unpack these
yeah.
things.
So thank you so much. I'll share my screen and hopefully you'll be able to see the PowerPoint that I've made. So let me just get it up. I don't know if someone has to stop sharing. I think Farah might need to stop sharing, but I might be able to stop her sharing actually, which I've done. Let me just get this up. Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for inviting me. And hi from the UK. It's much earlier than it is in Indonesia. It's just on 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not 8. So we still have the whole day. But I hope everyone's good. I hope everyone had a good holiday and Happy New Year. And as Dea said, I'm Vinay Kapoor. I work for the Free Speech Union. She's given a nice introduction of what we do, but I'll just go into it a bit more in terms of what I do. So, we're a political campaigning group. We're a representation group. We defend free speech. We want free speech protections in the UK to be improved, and we help people in everyday settings who get into trouble for their lawful right to free speech. So we do a lot of legal work. We rely a lot on the law, which I'll come back to. But I lead our work with young people, which is something we're increasingly trying to improve. We run a funding program, as Dea said, called the Ian McTaggart program. It's only for people based in the UK, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would be plugging it away to everyone else beyond the UK. But we administer grants to university societies, especially debating societies, who want to promote free speech, and we also give awards to individuals who come up with creative ideas. It's basically an opportunity for young people to use their initiative and creativity to promote free speech. So I run that, and then we also do lots of events in the UK for young people as well. And we're also doing lots of talks like this. So it's really great to be here virtually. So Farah and others asked me to talk about this topic, navigating free speech and responsible expression in a polarized era, which is a really interestingly phrased title. And I will talk about this today, but I also want to bring in our work into this in terms of how we as the Free Speech Union view freedom of speech in the UK, and how we view these kind of ideas, and also tie them into polarization, which is kind of less about what the FSU does, but more into things that I studied when I was at university. So I'm going to try and weave it all in together to hopefully give you guys an overview uh, of the topic nicely. And we'll obviously have lots of time for questions and debates. And if you have any pushback or want to know anything about the UK and the situation, just ask me. And I've put my email at the end of the slide in case any of you guys want to get in contact, or if any of you are interested in coming to the UK at some point and learning more, just let me know. I know you guys are on the other side of the world, but the offer is always there. So we are an organization that was established in 2020, so we will be 6 in March this year. And we were established just before COVID, not during COVID, but just before COVID. And we're a non-partisan group, and that means we're not political. We're not affiliated to a political party. We don't take political positions. We just stand up for free speech, and we see freedom of speech as an apolitical issue. That means an issue that isn't political. It's an issue that is more fundamentally concerned with democracy. It's more fundamentally concerned with the flourishing of human being in a democracy. So we believe that, and we campaign for free speech change more broadly. I'll come on to how in a minute. We now have 40,000 members, and that's grown a lot in the last few years, especially since summer 2024. It's really grown. We keep having bets about how many members we're going to get by the end of the year. So hopefully we'll continue to grow. We, however, see our growth as a negative thing in the sense that we believe that the more members we have, the worse the state of free speech is in the UK. There are lots of freedom of speech issues currently taking place in the UK. I would say in the West, in the Western world more broadly. But we're very much concerned with the state of freedom of speech in the UK, which I can come on to after. And that's reflected in our caseload because we've dealt with 5,000 cases in 5 years, and there's 5,000 individuals who have got into trouble, have had free speech problems in their lives, whether that be at work because of something they said, whether that be on social media, whether that be in the university, whether that be in a whole host of other sectors. We've dealt with many people who have had freedom of speech problems, and we're there to represent them and support them throughout the whole process. And that often involves taking legal action if we believe that these companies have or these people have suppressed people's lawful right to free speech. I'll come on to what lawful means in the context of the UK. Obviously, the context beyond the UK is different, and each country is different, but we deal with the UK predominantly. So maybe I can give you more of an overview on that. How we achieve our aims is we really rely on the law. We like good law and we don't like bad law. Increasingly, a lot of our work, to be fair, has been campaigning against laws in the UK that we think actually suppress freedom of speech and are really not conducive to free speech and the flourishing of free speech. So that's changed a lot since the government has changed in the UK. I mean, I don't know how many of you follow the politics of the UK, and I won't go into too much depth, but we had a change of government in July 2024 from Conservative to Labour. And since the Labour government's taken hold, we've seen, I would say, a more kind of clear suppression of free speech. From a legal point of view, but also from an everyday point of view with certain laws that they've put into place, and also their response to certain things as well, which we can kind of talk about more after. So we've been doing a lot more campaigning work. You might know this, you might not know this, but for example, the government recently said that they want to scrap the right to trial by jury for certain cases, and that's a very, very important right for people in the liberal Western world. In the UK, we've had the right to trial by jury since 1215, since the days of the Magna Carta. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was one of the first human rights entrenchments in the UK to take power away from the monarchy and give it to the people. Everyone knows the UK for its monarchy, but slowly throughout time, the monarchy has had less and less power. And the government is doing this because there is a backlog in our courts, which means that pe it's taking so long for people to have their cases heard. And the government is saying that we're doing this because we want, we want to clear the backlog. But we don't think that matters because that goes against people's right to free speech in the sense that a lot of the people who are tried for their rights to free speech in the UK are often found not guilty by a jury. So if you take away the right to trial by jury, we're worried that more people are going to get put into prison because of their views. So we're campaigning on that. We also lobby the government, and we also work with the government. So we've helped to pass laws in this country because of our influence with government. We do lots of events. We do online events. We do events in person, and we also administer the In McTaggart program, as I said. Again, I'll come back to this after, but this is just an overview. Now we did talk about what free speech is, I guess, a bit in the form, kind of more about what the limits are. But I want to give you an overview of how I would define freedom of speech, especially in the Western context. And this is a nice definition, I think. It's the right to articulate opinions and ideas without fear of government interference, fear of retaliation, or censorship, a principle recognized as fundamental to a functioning democracy. And I'm sure, hopefully, you all know what democracy is. It's the idea that the people should rule, and the idea that those within a democracy have certain rights. That's known as the liberal democracy, kind of comes from liberal political ideas. And the idea there is that human beings in a liberal democracy have the right to express their opinions and their ideas without worrying about the government suppressing them, without worrying about individuals suppressing them, or big companies censoring them, or perhaps their friends censoring them. Regardless, as you, as a human being within a democracy, are allowed to express your opinions without any of these fears. And that right is fundamental for democracy to function. We'll talk more about what that might look like after, but that's how I would define free speech. There are lots of questions about the limits to free speech, and we can debate those after. I have quite strong opinions on those, and some might disagree and some might agree. But at the Free Speech Union, we take quite a clear, I would say, quite a clear kind of approach on as to what we count as free speech and what we don't. Although with our work, this has been tested recently, which we can maybe talk about after. But that's how I would define free speech. So what do we count as free speech? What does the FSU as a company, as an organization that deals with this every day, how do we view free speech? Well, fundamentally we defend freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, that's the right to think, and intellectual inquiry. We believe that we defend that, and we believe that's so important for human beings to challenge ideas, to share knowledge, and to resolve disagreement, crucially without violence. Some people want to regulate free speech on the basis that they believe that some opinions can lead to violence. For example, if someone is racist to someone else, or if someone is sexist, or some sort of other sort of discrimination, a lot of people argue that that will lead to violence against a certain group. We believe that if people express their ideas, they will resolve disagreement without violence. And rather, if you suppress free speech, you will get violence. So there's a kind of interesting clash of ideas there. We oppose censorship, so we oppose the suppression of ideas. We oppose intimidation and abuse of power that silence lawful opinions. And those are opinions that you are legally allowed to have in the UK. Um, and we really believe this is so important in the UK because without these freedoms, we believe that no other freedoms can function. Without freedom of speech, we believe that there's no, not that there's any point, but you can't really have anything else if you don't have that. It's the fundamental starting point from which all other freedoms emerge. Um, we won't defend people who incite violence and threaten violence because that's not very respectful. And we'll talk about respectful free speech and dialogue and discussion later. We don't defend people who harass and target and cause target abuse to people. We don't defend people who libel people. Libel means they make knowingly false claims, and that's a whole separate area of law in the UK and in a lot of other countries. About people who destroy people's reputations and their lives through their speech by making up lies about them that actually cause harm to their lives. Now, that's for us, that's not got anything to do with free speech. There might be a debate every now and then about whether they overlap, but we believe that's a whole separate area of law, and there are lots of libel lawyers out there in the UK and in the world. There are lots of TV shows about libel law as well. It's a very interesting area, but we won't defend that because it's not got anything to do with freedom of speech in our eyes. Um, in the UK, we have, I would say there are more than three laws, but these are my favorites. The laws that we use in the UK that protect and defend freedom of speech. The first is Article 10 of the Human Rights Act, which takes another law, it takes the European Convention of Human Rights, which isn't the same as being part of the European Union, but it's a similar European body that lots of countries in Europe have signed up to and puts that into British law. So lots of countries in Europe have this similar kind of ideal, but they're not part of the same legal system, if that makes sense. And this protects the fundamental right to freedom of expression. So this is a really, really big one. And the thing is the UK doesn't have a codified constitution. If we want to get really legal, we can go into what that means. America has a codified constitution. That's to say that their constitution is all in one document. If someone said, "Find me the U.S. Constitution," you can just find it. It's 20 pages long. And you know how Americans are obsessed, generally speaking, with their rights. The First Amendment is the right to freedom of speech in America. They have that right entrenched, regardless of what happens. Whereas in the UK, we don't have a codified constitution. Our constitution is in lots of different places. So we have to rely on laws passed by our parliament, by our legislature, to protect free speech. So that's the first one. The second one is the Equality Act, which was passed nearly 16 years ago, which prohibits discrimination and harassment based on protected characteristics. This means you can't discriminate against someone because of certain characteristics, i.e., their religion and their race. But that also means having certain political beliefs are protected characteristics that you can't discriminate someone on the basis of. One of these is gender critical beliefs, and I don't know if debates surrounding gender critical beliefs are a big issue outside of the West. I think, frankly, they're not. Maybe I'm wrong. But there have been lots of debates in the UK and in America and continental Europe about transgender people and whether people who don't agree with their not their identity, but their kind of ideas, whether that is legally protected or not. There are lots of, and these people are called gender critical feminists, and they're people who believe that biological sex is really, really important and it actually really matters. And you can't just take that away and dismiss it. And lots of people have lost their jobs in the UK because they are gender critical. And that is a protected belief under the Equality Act. So the Equality Act has been used a lot to defend freedom of speech, saying that because certain people have certain opinions, they're allowed to have those opinions. These are legally held opinions. The final one is a bill that we helped to get passed, which is the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act that was passed in 2023. And that's a bill that codifies a duty for UK universities to secure lawful free speech. We had a lot of problems in the UK, I would say over the last decade, about people getting no platformed. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's people being disinvited from university campuses, speakers being invited and then being suddenly disinvited because of their beliefs. So imagine person A is invited, they're a renowned scientist and thinker, and a university invites them, and then some people look them up and realize that they've said some things that might be offensive or might harm people or upset people, they go and complain to the university and say, why are you inviting this person? They shouldn't be allowed to have a platform. And the university decides to actually disinvite them. That's called cancel culture, which we'll talk more about after, and no platforming. And this law says that universities must allow lawful speakers. They must allow these speakers because it's part of free speech, and we'll talk about that after. And we're very proud as an organization to help get this bill passed, because I think it seriously readdresses a lot of the problems that we had in the UK in the UK universities. Um, this is happening a lot in other countries in the Western world, in America. Although with Trump coming in, it has kind of changed. But as we all know, with Trump coming in, everything seems to have changed. But we're very proud of this as an organization. So we believe this protects free speech. Okay, now I've gone on about freedom of speech and why the FSU cares about it, what the FSU does and everything. But why should you care? Why should you, as citizens from across the world, citizens interested in liberty and human flourishing, why should you care? Why is this worth your time? Well, hopefully the answer is somewhat obvious that as I said, we don't want our societies to devolve into violence, I hope. I hope most of us are from that persuasion. And therefore, freedom of speech allows disagreement without violence. If we disagree with each other respectfully and in good faith, that's to say we view each other as human beings, not as people to diminish and criticize and tarnish, I think we'll avoid violence. So we must have disagreement without violence, and I think that's why you should care, because disagreement, if we don't have disagreement, then I worry that we'll disagree in other ways that are more violent. Although in a polarized world, that is actually harder, I think, frankly. It also helps us find truth via discussion. So if we engage in discussion with each other, we'll find the truth. Now, we don't know what the truth is about certain things. You know, you might believe there are certain truths, other people might not believe there are certain truths about certain topics, but only if we discuss them, we'll find out what ideas are the most persuasive, what ideas are the most compelling. But we need freedom of speech to do that. So you need that in everything that you do. The other thing is, I think freedom of speech exposes ideas that are, quote, bad. And again, bad is subjective. You know, you might think some ideas that other people view as bad are good. You have the right to that opinion. But we only expose ideas that are bad and uncompelling through them being uttered. So I believe people should be allowed to say what they want, and if they're saying something stupid, then everyone can hear them and then reject them. But if they were never allowed to say it in the first place, then that goes against their right to freedom of speech. You only become, and this comes to the next point, you only become more intelligent as a human being if you challenge ideas. You'll only grow as a human being if you engage with ideas that you don't agree with. If you don't, I actually think you'll become weaker. It's like you're not going to grow your muscles if you don't do exercise. You know, the only way to confront, to grow is to confront things that you don't like, and that includes ideas, frankly. And the last thing I would say is it enables those who are powerless, or in their eyes are powerless, to challenge the powerful. You know, if you can think and speak and write, imagine you have like your tongue in order, like you're so articulate and so confident. You know, you can do anything. Like your voice and your tongue is the most powerful thing that I think you can offer intellectually to anything. You know, you look at all the people who have written the great books of the world from all cultures, from all time periods, they use their voice. Whereas imagine if they hadn't said anything, then we wouldn't progress as a society, as human beings, as countries, as nations, and so on. So I'm hoping you can see why this matters, all the way from the level of the individual, all the way to the level of society, and putting that into context. Okay, now we are in a world that is emotional, polarized, and digitalized, and this is what Students for Liberty asked me to touch on: is how do we navigate this in a world that, frankly, is polarized and digitalized? And I added emotional, and I'll come on to these three in tandem. That's to say, I'll look at them all individually. You know, we're in 2026 now. We're not in 1812, you could say. We're not in 1859. We're not in 1945. You know, we're in 2026. And what does our world look like today? Well, frankly, I think we're in an emotional world. And I want to kind of riff on psychology for a second before I go back to politics. You know, we have to think that human behavior is fundamentally emotional, and that's very well argued in this book that I've put on the left, called The Righteous Mind by a psychologist called Jonathan Haidt. And the subtitle is Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And it's such a good book. I would 100% recommend it. It's just one of the best books I've ever read. And Jonathan Haidt is a social psychologist, and he says that human beings fundamentally are emotional beings. Think about when something happens to you. How do you react? You react emotionally first, and then your rationale, your reason, comes scuttling behind after. So you might think, why has he put an elephant on the screen? So this is how Haidt describes the human brain. The elephant is our emotion, reason is the rider. The emotion is the thing leading. Look, you see how the elephant is all back. The elephant is out of control. That's our mind. Those are our feelings. And the human being is the thing trying to hold it on. That's reason. And politics has become emotional, I would say. But I think politics has always been emotional because a lot of politics is about identity. A lot about who we are, where we fit into the world, what we believe in, what do we think is good, what do we think is bad, what kind of policies would we want to see or would we not want to see. And a lot of those things relate to who we are as human beings. And therefore, a lot of that is relevant to emotion. And therefore, emotion is a lot of our drive. I think it was David Hume, the Scottish philosopher, who said that reason is a slave to the passions. That's to say that the passions, that the emotions of human beings are slaves to reason. That's sorry, the other way around. That's to say reason is what comes after. Emotion is what comes first. So we have to think, regardless of whether or not we're polarized, we are emotional. If someone came and slapped us in the face, we're not going to be like, "Oh, thank you for doing that." We're not going to be rational. We might think it after, but we're going to react. If my house started burning down now, I'm not just going to sit there and be calm. Or if a missile just, I don't know, that's a radical example, just flew over me and crashed into the house next to me. I'm not just going to sit there. We're emotional. We react emotionally. We have emotion, and therefore we have to consider that in politics. Okay, so that's a psychology, but how does this link to political polarization? Well, fundamentally, we are in a very polarized time. Now, you could always say politics has been polarized because politics has multiple opinions. So in any free and liberal society, there are going to be multiple opinions. That's called pluralism, if anyone hadn't have heard of that before. There's a plurality of opinions, and even more so now that we're in a world that is very digitalized and very technologized. That's to say that anyone can kind of have their opinion. People that couldn't have their opinions before or have their opinions voiced can now just put them online because as part of being a global citizen, we have phones, we have technology. Because of technology, I'm able to talk to you from the UK, to talk to you in Indonesia or whichever countries you're in. We wouldn't have been able to do that before. So we've kind of become digital citizens, but in the sense that's meant that we've become more polarized. Um, we're seeing a lot of politics now having very, very deep set polarization. And what we're seeing actually is a lot of people having completely contrasting opinions to one another. So there's this idea, this is quite true. I don't know if it's true in your countries, but in the UK and in America, and I'm sure you'll see if you follow the news in America, I'm sure you'll realize this. A lot of politics has become what's called constellational. That's to say that a lot of contrasting ideas are linking with each other. So, for example, if you look at the geography of America and you look at which people voted for which parties, you'll see that certain states are more likely to vote for each parties. And the people within those states now are often from certain like political and kind of social characteristics. So people who now maybe you could say vote for right-wing parties are more likely to be older, they're more likely to be male, they're more likely to have less of an education, they're more likely to live in rural areas. Whereas people who are more likely to vote for left-wing parties and support progressive and socially liberal ideas are younger, they're more likely to be women, minorities, they're highly educated. So do you see how these all contrast each other? So the polarization is coming through. The other thing to say is if you look at our media, you'll see that there is polarization in the media. A friend of mine said to me once that, your neighbor could be living in a completely different world to you. And this is true. So imagine you have one neighbor who's a liberal student. They went to university. They studied about, I don't know, climate change. They want to go and save humanity. All their news comes from their friends or YouTube. They're more likely to be vegan. I don't know. They're not religious. And then you take their older next door neighbor. They say they watch right-wing TV all the time. They're religious. Basically, they have the complete opposite characteristics to them. And this is what I want to emphasize is that our polarization is becoming personal now, that the political is becoming personal. I don't know if you've heard of a feminist saying that the personal is political. I think it's the other way around now, and that's really worrying. And because we're seeing this affect people's everyday lives. The final thing to say is we're seeing that in cancel culture, which we did talk about earlier. It's this idea that people are losing their jobs and their friends because of their opinions. And you would think maybe 10 years ago, why does that even matter? Why does it matter that people have different opinions? We should still view people as humans. But that's not happening anymore. People are losing their jobs and their friends because of their opinions. And that shows political polarization taking hold of our everyday lives. And therefore, how do we navigate free speech in this environment where the personal is becoming, sorry, where the political is becoming personal, where politics is becoming part of our everyday life? And I'll come to that, but to riff on why politics is becoming part of our everyday life, is frankly because we're in an online world. We're in a world where politics doesn't stop at the public anymore. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Um, so again, I don't know if any of you study philosophy or politics, or you've looked at kind of political philosophy in the West. But traditionally in the West, political politics has been seen as something that is in the realm of the public. It's in what's called the public sphere. That means that participating in democracy, participating in politics is something that happens in public. This started in ancient Greek times where it was the men at the time, women weren't allowed. The men of ancient Greece would go to what the Hellenics, the Greeks called the polis, and they would engage in politics and they would debate and they would discuss, and you would see politics in public. But now, and you would go to, and in the UK, you see parliament in public, you see your democracy taking place in public. But because of social media, I think a lot of politics now happens in private because anyone can have access to their opinions from their phone. You can just type your opinions in on Twitter. You can see what anyone thinks on Twitter. So politics has become digitalized, and a lot of debate now is happening online. You see people having Twitter storm, Twitter match after Twitter match, debating each other, discussing each other, going after someone because of their opinions. And we also have short form content. We have TikTok, we have YouTube Shorts, we have Reels. All the social media companies have clocked that the way to get everyone's attention is to make short videos to ruin our attention span. And those videos, because they're shorter, have less detail. So that's the first thing to realize. They're less detailed. And also algorithms, right? Algorithms work in a way that means that they want to keep us on the social media platforms. So if we watch a video, say, imagine we watch a really clickbaity video about the left, and imagine someone's like, oh my God, the left are all Marxists. And you watch this video and there's a compelling explanation. The algorithm goes, oh, you like this video, I'm going to give that to you 10 times more. So you get slowly put into an echo chamber. And I'm sure you know what that all means, but it's that's to say that we're stuck within our spheres of thought. We're stuck within that which we believe in. And that's not great for freedom of speech, because then we're not engaging with the other side and we're not thinking critically. So it's great. So I'm not trying to create a bit of a skeptical scenario, but there are a lot of challenges for young people. I would class myself in that realm because I've just graduated, and for everyone about what is the world today and how do we engage with politics in a world that is increasingly polarized, in a world that's increasingly confusing, in a world that's increasingly divided, and where the most crazy things happen every single day of the week. How do we cope? And for you guys as people who are interested in liberty and making change, and want to go somewhere in your lives, whether that be through SFL or other things or whatever it is, how can you have an impact on the world if the world is like this? So I would say there's a challenge there because we feel alienated. And also the problem with these things as well is I think it pressures people to conform. What that means is it pressures them to have the same kind of opinions and to be agreeable. That's a personality trait of people who don't like conflict. We want to be people who are liked by other people. And therefore, if we say the wrong thing, there's a risk that our reputation, That's to say our who we are, our the perception that other people have towards us could be ruined. You know, if I say the wrong thing, I could lose my friends. I could lose my job increasingly, not at the FSU, but like a lot of in kind of other worlds, you could. Um, your everyday life could be affected just because of your opinion. You're worried that people are going to pile on and cancel you and censor you. There's a fear, there's genuine fear in your everyday life that your life could be derailed, and destroyed because of your opinions. And that's really, really not good for people. So that's a challenge. Now, what's the way out of that? I think ultimately is tolerance. And I think tolerance is the answer. And tolerance, I'm sure you've heard of this word, but because you're intelligent. Tolerance doesn't mean you have to agree. This is the important thing. Tolerance doesn't mean that you agree with someone. Tolerance doesn't mean you approve of something, right? Tolerance means I dislike or like your view, but I won't silence you. I won't take your right away to say it. I'm tolerant of the fact that you have that view, even if I don't agree, even if right to say it. And that's summed up in this famous quote attributed to Voltaire, which is, I may not believe in what you say or may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That's to say, in a liberal democracy, I might not like it. I might hate it. I might secretly hate it so much that I hate you, but you still have the right to say it. That's the point. You're not meant to like it, but we're not going to have a society if we're not tolerant. So how can you, as people, as young people, students, people who are going to do things in life, how can you practice tolerance? Fundamentally, I think it's so important to criticize arguments and ideas, not the people uttering them. So if someone says something you don't agree with, don't personally attack them. You don't need to say, "Oh my God, so and so, you're an idiot." You could say your ideas are stupid. I mean, I don't think that's that respectful, but you could say, "I think your ideas are weak because," and then you say why. Then you get into a debate. So you can strip back the person and the idea. Don't go and say that this person is a bad person because of their opinions. You know, say their ideas in your from your perspective aren't convincing. They're not compelling. They're not strong. But more importantly, if you really believe that, then say why. Be confident and articulate your opinion. So don't blame the people, blame the ideas, and also respond to them. The other thing to say is you should respond. But you should also listen before you respond. Lots of people think they've heard what the other person said, but then they didn't actually listen. They've strawmanned the argument. I don't know if you've heard of that word, but it's someone who's kind of imagined what they've said because they're not listened and they're more focused on getting their own way. And therefore they've actually got it wrong. So listen before responding. The other thing is accept the possibility you might be wrong because you might actually be wrong. Be humble and have humility and, be respectful and, focus on the dialogue and the point of learning, not the point of winning. I think it's so important to transcend the polarization that we're in. We have to focus on the dialogue, not on winning the dialogue, because there's no point in a debate if you just want to win it. That shows you're not serious. That shows you don't actually want to learn anything. It just shows you want to win. And that's not respectful. And then you're going to contribute to polarization rather than transcending it. The final thing is to read your enemies. Now that seems very like dramatic, but what I mean by that is, there might be some opinions you hate so much. You hate them. You're like, I hate them so much. They're terrible. These people ruined this. Why don't you read what they said? Not because you might agree with them, you might actually agree with them, which is quite funny, but also it's so important to read both sides of the argument. You're not going to become smarter if you don't read both sides. And more importantly, if you read the other side, you might find yourself agreeing with them or being nuanced enough to say, I think some of what they said is good. Or you might, in fact, agree with yourself even more. But you only did that through the process of reading them. Whereas imagine if you hadn't read them. So I would really, really strongly suggest that. And the final kind of thing to say is what can you do beyond tolerance is just generally in your life, like read as much as you can, like read books and learn about everything. Go and be that nerd in the classroom who's obsessed with this really small topic. Go and read. We have technology. That means you can read any book in the world. You can find anything about anything. Write about it, think about it, and also more importantly, debate it. Like be that person in the class who's disagreeable, who likes discussion and likes debating, because those are the people that have changed the world. Those are the people who have gone places in life because they use their tongue, as I said earlier. So I would just say, use your free speech responsibly, and this is what it looks like. Also be nuanced, as I said, like be aware of both sides of the argument and be respectful. Don't criticize the person, criticize the idea. Basically, just be Socratic, ask why. Now, the last thing I'll say is what does Socratic mean? So on the right, you have Socrates, who is seen as the first philosopher. Well, the first Western philosopher. I'm sure there were others before him. The kind of Western philosophy views him as the first thinker. And all Socrates did in his life, he was from ancient Greece. All he did was he just asked why. People would say certain things, and he would say why, why. That's the job of a philosopher, is to ask why. And all he did was ask why because he wasn't interested in winning arguments. He was just curious about life. And I would say, you want to be curious about life, and that's how you use your free speech responsibly. So I'll stop there. If you want to know more about what we do, I'm sure we can talk about that in Q&A, or just email me. But I hope that was useful. I hope you learned something. If you disagree with anything I said, just tell me, or if you want to learn more about the UK, just let me know. And you can follow us on X and contribute to political polarization here, at Speech Union. And yeah, I can tell you more, but I hope that was useful for everyone. Stop sharing. So,
Okay, wow, that was a very long yet still like a lot of things like we already unpacked or you already unpacked to us, which is thank you so much, Finai, for that. We very appreciated that. And some of the notes that I take that I found really interesting, because most of the time when I heard people talking about free speech, it's just basically when you are arguing with someone, it doesn't necessarily, or like you being you tolerating something or someone, you just, sometimes people just think, okay, you're just agreeing with me or something like that. But I just found it that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree or you need the approval or something. It's just you're tolerating it. And also, one thing that I note from Pinay's today's material is basically be curious, because be curious about life, questions everything, putting whys in everything, every little details that even maybe not ordinary people can not even think of it. Like be curious. It was a very, very good input. I'm gonna, after this, I'm gonna try to question everything. Okay, thank you so much for that, Finai. Now, during your speaking earlier, there are some questions already arrived. A couple of questions already arrived on the Q&A sections,
mm,
and we have already arrived also at the Q&A sections. And now I would like to read it to you, Finai, for the
yeah.
questions, which is the first one, which is this one: how can young people actively contribute to protecting intellectual freedom while also fostering respectful dialogue?
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I said about just doing the work in your own kind of intellectual context. That's to say, I think the way to protect intellectual freedom is to practice it and to do it. And that looks like reading. Frankly, I think reading is so important. That looks like going to the library and finding every book you can about a certain topic and getting lost in it. And, that's how you grow. And as a citizen, kind of taking that up in your classes, taking that up in your extracurriculars, taking that up in job applications, taking that up in everyday life. So I think that's how you actively do it in your life. In terms of more in a kind of practical context, I would also say, I mean, I don't know the context of the countries that you're in, but in the UK, we have, especially in Scotland as well. Like we have, I mean, I'm not in Scotland, but Scotland has a big intellectual tradition, and it really values the Enlightenment, kind of the philosophical period that kind of took rationality to the forefront. And in the UK, we have a lot of book clubs. We have a lot of political organizations, social organizations. We have a lot of debating clubs. I would say get yourself involved in debating clubs. Set up your own debating club. Go to lots of events. Just introduce yourself to people. Show it. And I think, and when the last bit about while also fostering respectful dialogue, I think it's also bearing in mind that you might not be right. So being that guy who's curious, but always humble enough to know that you're not always right and that you always have something to learn from someone. I think that's ultimately how you would do it. Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Okay, I hope it helps for those who ask those questions. It was actually very great. You can just start it from basically simple things like just read books and everything that you're interested in, which is trying to fit you up with those intellectual kind of thing to help you, have your own what is it, knowledge.
Mm.
And then one day you may want to go for it, you go for it. And second question. Thank you so much for that answer, though, Finan. Second question. We have the question. This is from anonymous attendee. I'm curious. What is it? Where should we draw the line between expressing a strong opinion and
Mm.
contributing to harm or misinformation?
Yeah, this is something that people raise a lot. So I would say so. There's two things in there about harm, misinformation. I'll take them both separately. So what is harm? I think that's the first question. So this is a big debate in philosophy, especially in the 21st century, as to what is harm in a world that's digital. Before I would say before the advent of the digital world, harm we kind of knew what harm was. It was framed in a really physical way. So in On Liberty, which I think I linked to in the readings, or you guys might have got that a book about John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. Mill says that one of the things that kind of free speech can be justified to regulate is he called the harm principle. And he defined harm as a physical thing. He said that my right to swing my fist ends at the tip of your nose. He didn't say that literally, but another philosopher interpreted it that way. And what that means is that if I punch you, I'm causing you harm. If I hurt you physically, I'm causing you harm. Now, we have laws, I think, in all our countries that protect against that, grievous bodily harm, assault, etc. Harm, that's what harm is physical. But people say, and people have said rightly, words can hurt, words can cause harm, words can upset, words can offend, words can make people feel a certain way. The problem is though, is it's really hard to regulate that at a societal level. So when you define harm as anything but physical, you create what I call a philosophical minefield because harm is quite subjective when it comes to speech. So for example, if I criticize someone's hair, they might say, actually, you're wrong. My hair is actually really nice and you're just an idiot and you don't know anything and like you wish you had my hair. Or they might be really upset because of their own insecurity or whatever. The problem is how do we in a political context regulate that? It's really hard because harm is intersubjective and subjective. Um, so I think it's useful to express strong opinions, but be prepared for the backlash you might get to them. But then I would say if you really believe that opinion, you should arm yourself with every counter argument against it and know the arguments inside out. I would say it's, and obviously always express your opinions, be that guy who expresses their opinions, tell the truth, but also be holistic enough that you know the ins and outs of it. So, I also do take issue with the word harm because I do think it is subjective, but there are genuine concerns about harm, as I've kind of spoken about. Misinformation is another debate that comes up because you could say there are some things that are factually true. Um, but the thing is I think people have the right to express views or not, regardless if they're factually true. I think the problem is a lot of people are trying to justify the suppression of free speech on the basis of misinformation. You might have said something that's factually incorrect. That's fine. Just get everyone in the comments piling on them then. That's part of democracy. I think last thing I'd say on that is I don't know if you've seen on X, there's the idea of community notes now. So this wasn't a thing until I think Elon Musk took over. And it basically allows people to kind of collate together and kind of come up with a response to something. So again, that's democracy working. That's freedom of speech working. So that's what I would say, but I also think it's useful to inquire about what does harm and misinformation actually mean beyond an idea that we might have about it when it comes to regulating it.
Okay. I hope that answers the
Yeah,
questions,
hopefully.
everyone. Yeah, hopefully it answered the question. But I bet they would very, very curious and wanted to ask Everyone remember, you guys have the Free Speech Union IG, or maybe after this, Vinay can tap his emails on. If you have more
Yes.
question or social medias on, you can just go into it because
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately we have limited time. But one more thing, we have one participant that would like to ask you directly, Vinay, if you
Okay.
don't
Yeah,
mind. I
yeah.
will allow him to talk.
Of
Um,
course.
okay. Stephen, are you there?
Yes,
Hi,
I
go
am.
ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. I am Steven. I am a local coordinator in Students Liberty. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Actually, my primary question is, what is the difference between freedom and liberty? In Indonesia, and liberty is the same meaning, kebebasan. But I
Uh,
think in the UK, it's different, right? Between
mm,
freedom and liberty. So what is
yeah,
the difference between freedom and liberty? Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Mm. It's interesting because the UK especially has wrestled with this idea since the idea of freedom first came about. I mean, I get if you guys see it as the same thing, then that would make sense. I think the difference is in the UK, we're really wrestling right now with what freedom is. Liberty, I think we've got nailed down, which is the individual has the right to do certain things. The individual has a sense of agency to be free from. I think we take the more negative view of liberty. I don't know if you guys know about freedom from and freedom to, the two different conceptions of liberty that Isaiah Berlin talked about. So I think we see liberty more as freedom from, freedom from bad government, freedom from arbitrary constraints. Um, I think a lot of our debates are actually concerned with freedom too. Um, and that's where I do think there is a difference in both the UK and Indonesia, because a lot of our debates that I think have linked into free speech issues concern this very question of my freedom to be, I don't know, a trans person or a gay person or a minority or a person who believes this clashes with your freedom to believe that, I don't know, sex is just a biological thing and you can't change it. Do you see what I mean? So there's a clash of freedom, my rights, my truth. A lot of our debates in the UK are really centered on the individual, my rights, my freedom, my truth, my lived experience. Like, a lot of it is very individualized, and therefore a lot of the people who push those ideas, they don't believe. I wouldn't. They believe in. Well, they don't use the word liberty. You know what the word they use is liberation, which is really interesting. There's an interesting contrast there because liberty seems to have its roots in that kind of classical liberal and a tradition that I know SFL is a big fan of and everything. But a lot of these ideas that I would say are more kind of critical theory ideas, they're more like postmodern ideas. They want liberation. They want to go out of the liberal into a kind of, I don't want to say post-liberal, but a more kind of socially progressive. So they use the word liberation, not liberty. So I don't, and that is a bit of a kind of sidetrack, but hopefully that gives some context in the UK. But there is a difference that I think between liberty and liberation, because liberty wants to preserve the system, but liberation wants to liberate, to go beyond, to get out of the current system, which I do see happening, and I think that's why a lot of free speech issues have taken place in the UK.
Got it. Thank you.
No worries,
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen, for the question, and thank you so much, Rina, for taking your time to answer.
that's fine.
And that was our last question, unfortunately. For that one more question on the Q&A, maybe after this, you can go on check into Free Speech Union's Instagram, or maybe go directly to Vinay's Instagram and ask the questions. Or if you guys here have more further questions, you
Yeah.
can
You can
just
just
go ahead and
email.
ask. So,
I can just put my email
yeah,
in the chat, to be fair.
yeah, sure. That would
Yeah.
be so great.
Yeah. All right. Just yeah, if you have any more questions, just email me. Hopefully you can see that on it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. Now we have reached an end to our Q&A sessions. Now, everyone, before we ended today's sessions, I would like to thank you so much again for Nice for the opportunity and also chance to be able, for the time specifically, to be able to share things with us. And then now we are going to end with only 5 minutes of reflections, which is the freedom walk. In here, Everyone just can scan this, and then you are feel free to invite to share perhaps one key takeaway from today's discussions or today's materials, and then or maybe a lessons that you, what is it, challenge you, or maybe having you have that kind of thoughts like why, or maybe a personal commitment related to expressions or open dialogue or whatever you have in mind. Just drop it on the freedom wall. It would be so great. We will be giving you what is it, 3 minutes for, oh no, 5 minutes for it. This is the link. I will drop it on the chat box as well, everyone, if there's some problem with the QR code that provided. But I hope everyone went all going through fine. Okay. Now we are well, going through this. I believe everyone must be already done because it's quite easy. So I just did that. So yeah, after this, everyone, we're going to reach to the last session, which is a photo session. So for those who are able to turn on the camera, especially on the panelist sections, I would very honored to see everyone's faces here too, because we're going to get a quick documentation with Vinay here. I'm truly sorry, maybe not everyone in the attendance could be able to join us. But for the panelists itself, I would be very honored for those who are able to uh, open your camera. Oh, this is the result of it. Oh, super fun. Thank you, Fina, for the sessions. Government shouldn't interfere. Ooh. If there's anyone who hasn't done yet, please do so. We would like to see everyone's thought here. Will be so great. Contact you as soon as possible. Oh, I, I'm kind of curious who is asking that. Probably those who still have more questions to be given. Oh, there's awesome. Let's see, is there anyone? Is any more? Okay, you guys are so good. Oh, thank you so much. Whoever being the paparazzi for today. I do hope everyone taking notes on these things because, in Students for Liberty, we also did events. We also, especially the events going on right now, which is human respect training, which is, I believe, kind of related with this kind of thing. But not only human respect training, but also those other events in Students for Liberty. So maybe uh, the Students for Liberty local coordinator or attendants from the Students for Liberty could take notes because this is going to be very helpful for maybe or next event or next ideas for event, an open debate perhaps, or like more discussions, book discussions again. It's going to be very interesting. So hope everyone take notes and will be uh, being re- reflective towards it. Oh, there's one question over there. If you don't mind answering real quick.
We have not in Indonesia, but we have. If you go to FSU International, I'll find a link to that. You'll see where we have other FSUs. It's mainly in like the English speaking world, sadly, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, South Africa. It's here. I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, if you're talking about Asia, sadly the answer is no. Um, but um, maybe one day, I don't know. I put it in the chat if people want to know more about that.
Okay, thank you for the curiosity, everyone, and also for the excitement. Okay, now since we're done with the freedom of fall, thank you so much for those who given their thoughts and everything. Now we're coming to the last sections. As I said before, there will be documentation sections. So for those in the panelist sections, feel free to turn on your cameras so that would be able to get a quick capture. Maybe Fahra, you can help me to take quick capture because my device wasn't able to
Yeah, I
quickly
can.
capture. Okay, good.
3, 2, 1. All right. One more with another pose. 3, 2, 1. Great.
Great. Okay. That's the end of today's sessions, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you had a good day. And Finite, right now you're free to go outside.
I don't know if I will, but thank you so much. It was really fun.
Thank you
So,
so much. It was really fun. Good
no,
day, everyone.
see you.
Or good
Thanks.
night.
Good night or good afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.